if you're delegating tasks and not projects, you're not delegating, you're micromanaging.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Welcome back to the Bev and Rich Show. I am your host today, Mike Abramowitz, along with my co-host, back in action. I'm so glad that he came to join this conversation with Kasim. Andrew Biggs, welcome back to the show as a co-host. And Kasim, welcome to the show as our premier guest today. Gentlemen.
Brothers, thank you for having me. I appreciate you both.
Yeah, man, super excited for this chat. Our first one was fire, and I can only imagine that this one's going to be even better. So excited to hear, man.
Our first one got me in so much trouble because I said some things that were hyperbolic in nature, and then they got clipped out on TikTok, and I just got roasted, dude. Like some of those folks were creative in their insults.
I was hoping we could do it again because that got like a couple 100,000 views. So we could just do that again. So what are your best racial slurs or insults that you
How do I
bring?
be as offensive as possible? Yeah.
Dude, it's always good to see you, man. Again, thanks for making the time for us. Since the last time we spoke, for anybody that hasn't listened to that episode about the Pareto Talent, bringing on VAs, offshore assistants, how to properly hire, how to delegate, how to onboard, just was a masterclass, a playbook, step by step. Every single human needs to go back and listen to Kasim's episode on the Better Than Rich show. You're the first guest, as I mentioned before we click record. We invited back for round 2. We're almost at 250 episodes or so. So grateful that you're here again. What's your focus right now, man? Like what's happened? I mean, you've had multiple exits. We talked about that the last time too. Where's your head at right now? Where's your focus?
I did a workshop with a friend of mine, Christine Marie. She does this thing called Known Founder, and it was really helpful because what I say I want and what I'm doing are two entirely different things. Like I say I want $100 million net to me after taxes. That's my goal. Is I want 100 million bucks. I've done a deck of million. I had a $12 million net worth. I had a divorce, so that's 7 million. Yeah, I got cut off at the knees a little bit, and I want to go for a big swing. And to sterilize the conversation, I hope you all don't mind, but from an entrepreneurial perspective, I've always found it interesting that people are so reticent to talk about money, and it frustrated me as a kid because I didn't know whose advice was worth what. So I like when Hormozi's like, I made a $44 million exit. It was an all cash deal for 65% of my equity. Like that was helpful. And it cuts both ways. My advice is worth a deck of million. I produced a deck of $1 million net worth. Hormozi's advice is worth 20 times my advice. Dalio's advice is worth 140 times his, along the level of analysis of which we're experts. And so what I'm doing really is apologizing to the audience if they feel like I'm being, to me, it's one step above just having a Lamborghini in my background. You know what I mean? Like I could do that too, and I drive a 40-year-old Honda. This is the way that I feel we should be discussing business discussions because money's how we keep score. So that said, I would want $100 million net to me. And I want that because I want to be in the room and I want to be able to impact change and I want to be able to make decisions. And that feels like the line of demarcation. The problem is I have a portfolio of 17 businesses. The worst thing you can do to poor people is give us money because we become investors. And all of them are functional. And some of them are even fun mailbox money. But when I look at it, I don't know what, man, 3 might have $100 million on them long term. And basically what I realized was I say this, but I do this. You know, I say this thing like I want to level up, I want to go bigger, but then I continue to play the smaller games of things, small contextually. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to spend the rest of this year cleaning my slate, putting things on autopilot. You know, I'm actually going through my 3rd exit right now. I'm selling one of my favorite businesses ever that I've ever built, and it just doesn't fit my buy box any longer. And I want to go big swings. And I think it's a good question for everybody to ask. Is the road you're on going to get you to where you want to go? And this isn't the first time I've learned this lesson. I remember one of my first businesses was a website design business. I was building websites at $3,000 a pop, and I was making like 750 net to me after everything and paying my vendors and all that stuff. And I had this sticky note on my wall with whatever financial goal I had at the time. I don't remember what it was. But I remember I finally just decided I did the math and I took that goal and I divided it by 750 and I was like, I have to build 18,000 websites. You know, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to ever get to that goal doing this thing, which it's shameful that I have to learn this lesson so often. But that's where I am right now to answer your question in the longest way possible, Mike.
Well, it's a great reminder and a great reflection for all of us to constantly be looking back at that and thinking about that. You know, when you think about where you have these 17 businesses, obviously a big one is related to Pareto Talent and hire. So I don't know if that's your big play or if it's something else, but just, when you look at what you're trying to do right now in the marketplace in terms of educating entrepreneurs, is it mostly related to that? And if so, what's the main thesis point around, your new book and all these things that are coming out from you?
Yeah, that's, interestingly, Pareto Talent's such a perfect example. It's a passion play. I love, and you guys I know, have the same heart because we've had this conversation multiple times. There's very few things professionally that are more fulfilling than helping people in emerging nations find meaningful work. It's amazing. It fires me up. We're doing another boot camp. I've got 500 some odd people in Latin America that I'm talking to about how we're changing the world, and we really are. And it's not a scalable business. It just
Hmm.
can't be. We're placing one EA with one entrepreneur at a time. And so that's one of those things that I just need to reframe. I still want to do it and I still love doing it. And it's never going to make $100 million. But I can't let it go because it feels like an integral part of who I am. The thing that's interesting though is if I look at it differently, it's the building blocks that will get me to the 100 million, because what I'm really doing is I'm finding and cultivating exceptional talent, which is exactly what I need for the bigger plays. I own syndications.com with some partners. I own seedoil.com with some partners. So like really big plays that require human capital. And so this entity alone, I don't even think we could hit 8 figures in revenue without a change in model because of the way we do it. It takes 1,000 applicants to train one EA. So, that's a very non-scalable endeavor. And I have the best people in the world. So to put that in perspective or give you an example, I own AEO.co, which is my new favorite little soapbox because SEO is dead and most people don't realize that. And AEO is going to be the new thing. AEO as a business was built by one Colombian EA. His name's Julian. He wrote the book from the ground up. He manages a 6-person research team. He created the school community. He manages the community every week. And this is a young man that before this was by his own words, recovering graphic designer. So that's the game I'm playing, is find the who and put them in a position, because AEO could be $100 million lick. Like that is a no joke scalable business, especially the way we're about to do it. So that's kind of my thesis, is use Pareto as my sandbox. But I still
Hmm.
love that model, man, and putting people together. And I mean, Tim Bratton has one of my people, Justin Donald has one of my people, like really high value entrepreneurs that are moving mountains in so many ways. And to watch that symbiosis is so fulfilling.
Bro, so inspiring, man. I love hearing you talk. And I also want to make sure that who we're talking to right now, that we're gearing season 4 to, just so you're aware, I don't know if you are, is like this home service guy. Like the trades is where we kind of planted our flag. And I know you connected me to
Dude,
Chris
I
Gray,
did
which is
not know
great.
that. Good for you guys. We got
So
to talk about that. I'm doing a buy sell. I've got an incubator in the services space.
so I wanted to make sure that the context of this conversation is, we could go whatever direction, but I really like to make sure the core of it is speaking to the guy in the van, whether that's someone in the home services or trades or running a local service business. Just like later today, I'm speaking with a woman owned business who does interior design, and in her first 9 months they did 700K. She left a 25-year-old company that she was running and said, I want to do this.
Mm,
And is just doing her thing with a woman-owned operation. I love it. So it's like these home services that they're just so stuck in the
yep.
day-to-day owner operators, 3 to 5 million in most cases. That's who we're hanging out with. That's who we're helping. And that's what I would love to make sure that we're speaking to when it comes to AEO, or when it comes to delegation, or using EAs, or using any technology that you're suggesting, or even exiting, positioning them for an exit. Whatever direction we continue to go, I just want to make sure we know we're speaking to that guy, if that's cool. So if you
That's
have
so
something with
helpful.
that,
Well, I know the industry really well. Context there is I have an incubator, which is this is such a made up term. I don't even know what incubator means. I don't think I could spell it. I have a group of people that meet every Friday and we talk about building and buying businesses. And our buy box is local home services. I'm buying a septic tank company right now. Me and a friend are doing. Oh, dude, do you guys know Tyrell? He's an FRD. We're doing. I don't know if I can let his cat out of the bag yet because he's got an LOI, but it's not purchased. But he's doing a home services business. I love that industry because we're looking at the biggest labor collapse in human history, forced obsolescence for most digital things, and that's one of the businesses that isn't just ripe, but is also at massive risk because of the silver tsunami. The average business owner is like 60 years old, doesn't have an ascension plan, kid doesn't want it. And so I think we're going to take all these people that lose jobs and all these people that have jobs but don't know how to house them and funnel them together. That's my thesis. It's so extraordinarily necessary. The issue that I've seen with home service businesses is all of them, not to be hyperbolic, and I feel comfortable that I'm not exaggerating, they all have the same key man problem. They all have the one or two, and it's usually, mother, daughter, or two brothers, or some familial connection, one or two, the brains, let's say, the people that really know how to do the thing. And then they've got some tendrils out, but they make what I think is a critical mistake in the world of entrepreneurial endeavors, which is they don't delegate when they think they're delegating. If you're delegating tasks and not projects, you're not delegating, you're micromanaging. And so they do the classic small business thing, which is they're like, all right, you go do this and then come back, and you go do this and then come back. And the problem with that is you will never not be in a position where you have to continue to be, the general on the battlefield barking all these orders. And the one paradigm shift I'd love to offer all of them, and they don't need to hire anybody, they can do this right now with their existing staff. Delegate projects, not tasks. Delegate projects, not tasks.
The examples. Yeah. Give if you have some
Scary,
specifics
dude.
on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, let's say with the septic business is a really good example. There's some infrastructure cost to septic that's not insignificant. And the type of truck that you're using is relevant to the way that the job is done. And to switch from one to the other is a model change. So if I owned a septic business and I was doing it the wrong way, I would be responsible for that model change. I'm going to go figure out what the new type of truck is, what the new process looks like, how to manage that process, how to train the team. And to do that while also managing the business, managing customers, managing finance, managing books, managing ops, managing HR. That's why business owners get stretched. So what we need is, hey, Andrew, listen, I need you to do me a favor, dude. I need you to go to school on this model change. We're on the old truck system. There's 3 different options for us. I don't know which one is best. I want you to figure it out. Now, something's going to happen here. It's an inflection point. If you try to do that and the person you are delegating to is incapable of that task, as tragic and caustic as this might sound, they're not right for the role. If you only have people that need to be managed, I don't feel like you have the type of staff that would be necessary to really grow a business. And this is going to get more caustic, but we're going to have an honest conversation here. We really are looking at the largest labor collapse in human history. And I'm watching this live. I'm seeing it with friends. I'm seeing it in communities. There is going to be no shortage of extraordinary labor. So finding good people and employing good people is going to be relatively easy. It's going to be incumbent upon you to do that. And if you don't have people that can take those projects, that can use their brain, that can be creative problem solvers, that can really think through an issue, then you need to go find one, because you'll never be able to lift yourself out of the hub and spoke of small business ownership. What I will say in defense of those people, my very strong opinion is, and this is a religious truth, every human being is a miracle that is capable of things that are incalculable, that there's no way to hyperbolize, that can truly just blow your mind, but you have to treat them like that and you have to expect it. And if you do that, and there might be some bad habits to break, but if you really hold somebody accountable to that result, I think you're going to find yourself relatively surprised. If you're the smartest person that works for you, you're an idiot. You want to be the dumbest human in your organization along whatever level of analysis we're discussing. So if I ask you about your books, your bookkeeper better be better at your books than you are. You know what I mean? If I ask you about your ops person better be better at your ops than you are. And if they're not, and what I've noticed too about a lot of entrepreneurs is they're afraid of competence. They're actually afraid to hire somebody who's better, smarter, faster, stronger, because they don't want to get outrun. They're like, oh gosh, they'll take this from me. They'll steal my business. Most people aren't entrepreneurs. They actually want to be an employee. So empower your employees. And the service-based business it's such a perfect microcosm and sandbox for this, because there's no differentiation possible outside of people. You have 4 things you can sell in any business. You have products, programs, processes, people. The first 3 are commodities that are accessible to everybody. Everybody, unless you're a $1 trillion organization that really can create your own fancy whiz-bang whoever, all service businesses have access to the first 3 in the exact same proportion, to the same way, for the same amount of money. People are the only key differentiator. And you see that there's an HVAC company here in Phoenix that I'm obsessed with, Sun Devil. Because, dude, anything, it happened to me and it happened to my mom within 2 weeks. My AC went out, and in Arizona, that's deadly. And within 24 hours, I've got Frankie, my buddy from Sun Devil, over here telling me, oh yeah, your compressor thing went out. We replaced it for you. Absolutely free. It's no big deal. And I will never go anywhere else, and I'll have this conversation with everybody. And I thought, man, what a great experience I had. Talked to my mom a week later, same thing happens to her. And I talked to Frankie about it. They prioritize people who have lost their AC in the summer, and they'll actually cancel preventative maintenance in order to help do that, because they've understood this relationship building mechanism. And I think every business can do that type of thing. You can find Frankies and employ them and empower them to impress people like me. And I will never go anywhere else. I don't care how much cheaper it is. There's so much fighting to be at the bottom. There's very little move towards the top. If I'm not talking too much, I'll offer one more example. I'm on my 5th pool cleaning company. It's so frustrating, dude. Every house in Phoenix has a pool. I used to do fix and flips, and the second most common reason for a home not being able to sell on the retail market is because of a disgusting pool. First is a roof, second is a pool. Then you can't retail your house and you have to sell it at a discount. So pools are really dangerous things. They can be tens of thousands of dollars in repairs. And every pool cleaner charges $150 about, and every pool cleaner does a good job for about 3 months and then they fall off. I wish to God somebody would come to me and say, it's $300 a month, but you will never worry about your pool again, and we're going to be picture perfect, and we're going to send you the pictures, and I'm going to help with the filter, and my guy's not high, and we're going to do the job, right? Be the best on the hierarchical scale, but it requires that 4th key differentiator. It requires people, and we can talk about the people discussion if you want.
Yeah. Well, we love when you get on your soapbox. So thanks for.
Sorry.
And so I would say, I love this idea of delegating projects, not tasks. And as somebody who's actually a member, of the AEO community that you've built with Julian, I'm super impressed with this guy. And to your previous point, it's, well, how do you find someone like that, right? Because if I'm going to be completely transparent, there's only a handful of people in my organization right now that I feel like I could delegate projects to, not tasks, which is up from 0 2 years ago. So we've been listening to you, and so it's better, but it's like, I can count on one hand the number of people I can trust with that. We've used some of your principles, but I would love for you to, kind of expound upon those. How do you find someone like that? And what's the process? I was listening to one of those things where I heard you speaking around delegating the project and then letting them just do it and not opening up the black box of delegation, if you will. So if you want to speak to some of this stuff, that'd be awesome.
I'm so glad you asked, Andrew. So the first thing I'll say is all of this is free. There's no ascension. I'm not about to try to sell anybody a course. If you go to thehirebook.com, you're going to get everything that I'm about to talk about absolutely free, including workbooks, cheat sheets, resources, templates, etc. There's 7 steps, and I'll breeze through them, and then you guys stop me as I start to annoy people. Step number 1 is, we've already touched on, you need an absolute and complete total reframe. We're taught to hire people improperly. We're taught by the business world to treat people, hire people, pay people, and manage people like commodities. And there's a reason for this. There's a shorthand necessity to the discussion that forces that paradigm, but it carries over into action. So to make that a little more accessible, you might say to yourself, oh, I need to go hire a graphic designer. And there's nothing wrong with that statement at face value. But if you really think through the mentality, that's a discussion of commodity. A graphic designer, it's not an ear of corn. You know what I mean? It's not a computer monitor. We're talking about a human being with a spirit and a soul who's a literal miracle and capable of incalculable value. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I really want people to understand what we're doing. And the way to understand this is the Pareto distribution. The Pareto distribution is the most important mathematical principle in business and in life. And what it says is, people call it the 80-20 rule. Technically speaking, the Pareto distribution is the square root of the total participants are responsible for 50% of the output. That's too hard to say. So we're going to say the 80-20 rule, which means 20% of the input is responsible for 80% of the output. And it's true in every organic ecosystem. 20% of criminals commit 80% of crimes. 20% of your customers are responsible for 80% of your revenue. 20% of employees do 80% of the work. But it's fractal. This is where things get mind-blowing. It's fractal. And I didn't know what fractal meant. Somebody on a podcast explained it to me. Let's say you have 1,000 employees in an organization, okay? That means that 200 are doing 80% of the work. And you hear that and you're like, yeah, that's believable. I've seen that. We've all, I worked at a call center as a kid that had 1,000 employees, and that was definitely true. But zoom in on those 200 and things get really interesting. Of the 200, 40 are doing 80% of that work. Of the 48 are doing 80% of that work, which totally amounts, if you go all the way down, it means that in a 1,000-person organization, one person does 25% of the total work. One person out of 1,000 is responsible for a quarter of the work, which is insane, but is a perfect mathematical articulation of exactly what I'm saying about humans being miracles when you allow them to be miracles. I had the highest, built the number one ranked Google Ads agency in the world, sold it for an 8-figure sum of money. When I sold it, I had almost 100 employees. One person managed 40% of my revenue. John Moran, greatest Google Ads mind in the world. And most people, when they see that, they go, oh no, key man risk, mitigate the risk. But what that does is you take a hierarchical structure where all the most valuable assets go to the top of the hierarchy and you flatten the hierarchy. So you don't mitigate the risk. You get rid of your peak performers. And that's why bureaucracy does things like minimums and quotas. They're asking for mediocrity. So step one is you have to know that you can index towards that 1 in 1,000, or more appropriately, the 8 out of 1,000, right? Those people are accessible. The 1 out of 1,000 can be a unicorn. The 8, I promise you, you can get every single time. Now, if you believe that, my framework will work for you. If you don't, go do something else, because that's the critical prerequisite. That's the paradigm shift. That's the psyche we have to assume, that there are those people that can move mountains, and you know that because you've experienced them. Now, the question is that you asked, how do you find them? First and most importantly, and this is repellent to everybody, but I'm gonna get us over this hump. You have to pay more. Winners want to win. And money's how we keep score. You have to pay more money. And it's not just money. You have to pay more in all the ways a human can be paid. Pay more in freedom. Pay more in reciprocity. Pay more in having a fun place to work. Pay more in benefits, right? I like to let people work from home on a semi-flexible schedule. I don't screenshot desktops. I don't make them ask me to pee. You know, we want to go to your daughter's ballet recital. Why are we even having this discussion? Just do your damn job. And I pay more. And then people say, well, wait a minute, how much more? And because we've been taught to hire people like they're commodities, the way to buy a commodity is you pay the absolute least for the most. That's how you win. So if I'm buying beans, I want the most beans for the least amount of money. But people aren't beans. So let's say, just to use basic math, because I have a 10th grade education, the role you're hiring for, you want this graphic designer, and the graphic designer generally costs 75 to 100 rubies a month, right? So you need 75 to 100 rubies. Well, how does a commodity mine buy that? They try to pay 74.9. They want to pay the least and get the most. What I say is pay 10% more than the high water mark. And then people go, gosh, man, you don't understand my margins, my model. And I'm like, no, you don't understand math. Because when you hire a Pareto Talent, you don't get 10% more, 50% more, 100% more. You get 3 times, 5 times, 100 times. The math can't not math. So pay 10% more than the high water mark. And they go, okay, well, 10% more than 74.9. And I say, no. 10% more than the high water mark is 110. So I need you to swing from 74.9 to 110. And most people will not, cannot, shan't do it. They just can't wrap their minds around it. But if you're willing to suspend disbelief and you swing that far, and it's not just that, by the way, when other people were paying Filipino VAs $500 a month, I was paying $1,500 a month. Pay as much as you possibly can. Ruin economic markets. Ruin it for everybody else. Do that. And you will get inundated with applicants. This is step 2, by the way. And this is your job posting. Your job posting needs to be the greatest job posting of all time. You need to pay more. You need to offer freedom and flexibility. You need to offer meaningful work, because that's what human beings want. When people are like, oh, I tried outsourcing, it doesn't work. And then I dig into it and I'm like, well, what did you try to outsource? And they're like, well, they had to make 500 cold calls a day. And within 2 or 3 weeks, they just stopped. And I'm like, oh, you don't say. Give people real work that show them, connect them to the meaning. This is why you matter as a human being. And when you do, and the other thing that's so funny is go read job postings, dude. Go to Jobbing or Monster or Indeed. And it's always like, you must comply with all rules and regulations or you will be publicly flogged. You know what I mean? It's like, what peak performer would want to work for you? Be awesome. Attract and repel. You know what I mean? Like, show them this is why we're great. And that's your job posting. Now, here's the thing. This is step 3. Within the job posting, you are going to, if you do this right, if you create the most effective job post that's ever existed, which means you put all your cards on the table, you tell them why the job might suck, you tell them why the job is awesome, you attract and repel appropriately, then you need a solid distribution strategy. The number of employers that post their job posting on one job board one time and sit back and say, like, it's so hard to find people. I'm like, you don't say. Go carpet bomb the airwaves, dude. This is a traffic problem. It's a traffic problem. Your job posting is a sales letter. Right? You need to put your sales letter, it's offers times repetition equals success. So post on multiple job boards multiple times with great frequency. Maybe, God forbid, you actually have to pay a little bit of money to promote your job posting, because people that go after quality candidates know that quality candidates are worth that. So build your distribution strategy. If you have a quality job posting and quality distribution, you will get thousands of applicants. If you're hiring internationally, if you're hiring domestically, you'll get hundreds. You'll get more than anybody else gets. Now, what do you do with hundreds? That's hard. It's a needle and a stack of needles, and everybody looks great on paper. So you have to filter the stack. And let me pause real quick. How am I doing? Is this too fast, too much?
No, well, for me specifically, I would love for you to make sure we're speaking to the guy in the van, because he's hiring typically more guys to go in the van.
Yeah.
So just at least speak to that. Keep going with the virtual world.
Thank you for that, Mike. That's so
But
helpful.
also
Keep
want to
reminding
make
me.
sure that we're,
And
because
dude, I've seen
sometimes the
this
guy
work
in the
domestically.
van might not be looking for a job, right? So it's like he's already working for the plumber, Joe's Plumbing down the road, but Sun Devil HVAC might be hiring and has the Pareto talent and is posting an ad, but the guy working at Joe's Plumber is not going on job boards looking to see if the HVAC company is hiring. So it's like, just kind of speak to maybe what these guys might be hearing or thinking in their way. The landscape lighting company, the custom home builder, the remodeler, the landscape architect, the roofer, the garage door guy. If you can, keep doing what
Yeah.
you're doing, but speak to that guy too, please.
So one of my friends and mentors is Jim Younger. He owns Younger Brothers Construction. It's the second largest employer in the state of Arizona. I think second only to the state. 11 different companies, thousands of employees. I've had this conversation. It's their number one constraint is talent. And to the point that you just made, Mike, talent, great talent, very often is not trolling job boards, saying like, oh gosh, I wish I'd find a job. They're already crushing it somewhere else, which is why the distribution strategy is so important, right? You have this really awesome offer. Go put it where really awesome people are. And that might not be Jobbing or Monster and Indeed. It might be Facebook, right? It might be Craigslist. It might be what I really like to do, to be honest with you, this is a pro tip and a hack. Go find the groups and the communities that high value technicians are a part of. Somebody who's really good at what they do, a really adept plumber, a really adept journeyman carpenter, a really adept tradesperson, generally speaking. And I've seen this, I'm trying to remember, it was cabinetry. There was a WhatsApp thread. My buddy Milner owns a cabinet company in Tucson. It's a big one. He does, whatever it is, some 8-figure gross rev a year. And he showed me this WhatsApp thread of all these cabinet people in the Southwest taking pictures of what they've done and sharing it with each other, because there's an artistry to it that a non-cabinet person would never know. And when you have your cabinets installed, you can't even tell, because it's all behind the scenes. It's all nuts and bolts. It's subterranean. What I would do is I'd go into that WhatsApp group and I would very casually and with great, humility and as ethically as possible, maybe asking the moderator, I'd say, hey, just so y'all know, we're hunting for a really strong specific. We really want some, because different cabinet people need different skill sets. So somebody who knows that, and then the way to phrase this, by the way, is if you know anybody. So I'm not trying to poach you, but if you know anybody who wants the best job that's ever been, offered, and super high pay and great benefits and lots of time off and great autonomy, treated like an adult, and our visions are aligned, I'd love just send them my way. And now all of a sudden, guess what? You get inundated. Go to where they are. And those communities, the people that are working to improve themselves, man, that tradesperson, and that's the thing that I love about the trades, all trades to some degree, I think, feature a level of artistry. Even something is, dude, septic tank pumping is you are funneling human feces into a truck on one spectrum of understanding, right? On one spectrum of understanding. On another spectrum of understanding, though, especially if you get into installation, repair, maintenance, those types of things, it's engineering that is the most important engineering facet of that home. If you really look at it, plumbing, sanitation is the most important substructure to all of society. And this is a stated fact. So you can say, oh, all I'm doing is pumping shit. Or you can say, I am engineering the most important substructure of society. I want that person. And you can find those people because artists look for places to showcase their art. That's the distribution. And when you've distributed properly, you will get inundated with applications. Now, when you get inundated with those applications, you have to be able to filter the stack. And the benefit that we have is we know for a 100% fact that proactive people will be proactive and reactive people will be reactive. So the way that you filter the stack is your job posting is going to say something like, to apply, your application must read, actually read the instructions. And what that means is when they send you an email, the subject line should read, I actually read the instructions. If it doesn't, they get filtered out. What that also means is they actually have to read the instructions. So you're going to say something like, send me your resume in a PDF format with this naming convention. Do I care that it's a link and not an attachment, or PDF and not Word? No, I care that they can follow instructions. Send me pictures of your most recent work. Send me an explanation of the biggest mistake that you see people making in the plumbing industry or in the trades industry. Things that would let you know, like, oh, this person is actually knows what the hell they're doing. Now, what'll happen is most people won't follow the instructions. Most people that follow the instructions won't do it well, or will do it in a way where you're like, oh gosh, you're phoning it in, or you're using ChatGPT, and you'll end up with a short list. So you'll go from hundreds of leads, let's say, to a short list. Now, here's the wicked ninja super trick part that I am obsessed with, and again, I need to make people accessible to. Resumes and interviews tell you nothing. We're taught to hire off of resumes and interviews. Resumes I actually think are irrelevant and superfluous, because very often the red flags in resumes, things like, broken timelines or job hunt switching or even industry switching, are actually a benefit to you. The diversity in the background, let's say, or somebody who's being really tenacious. So I don't rely on resumes or interviews at all until after I've worked with somebody. So here's what I like to do, especially in the trade space. Anything that somebody has to do something. I say, hey, Mike, listen, loved your application. You're awesome. I've learned enough to know I'm never going to be able to interview you properly until we've worked together. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to pay you in advance for a trial project. I'd like to pay for an hour of your time. I'm going to pay you in advance, and pay him something that's relevant. Pay him $100, pay him $50, whatever market you're in. If you're in the Midwest, $50 is great. If you're in San Francisco or Miami, you probably have to pay $100 to get somebody's attention. What you want them to know is, I value your time, and I'm going to hold you accountable to a paid rate. So let's say you do this for 10 people or 20 people. You're like, oh God, $1,000 costs them. Are you insane? But wait, there's nothing more expensive than a bad hire. Here's what I do. I say, if you agree, I'm going to pay you in advance. Send me your PayPal, and I'll send you the trial project. People send me their PayPal. I pay them in advance, then I don't follow up, and I don't send the trial project. And now $100 is the cheapest amount of money you could ever spend to see who's unethical, who doesn't follow up, who's not proactive. And it's so funny because people will send me an email a month later saying, hey, you sent me money and never sent me a project. I'm like, yeah, thank God I didn't hire you. Person that obviously needs to be managed and have their look over their shoulder. The people that follow up with you, send them a trial project that's relevant to the role, but not one that's check the box. Send them one where it's, I need you to solve this problem. So, and a lot of this, by the way, can be very hypothetical. You're like, hey, we're dealing with a mobile home park, and the septic happens to be above watershed, which can always be very dangerous and wouldn't have been approved past 1971, but the mobile home park was built in 1965. And this is happening with this home, and this is happening with that home, and we can't figure out why. What would you do? How would you walk through this? That's a project. A task is, show me the steps that you would go through in order to hook the 1955, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want those people. You don't want people that can check boxes. You want people that can think like, oh gosh, if I encounter this problem, here's how I'd approach it. And if you're good at what you do, and all tradespeople are, you can come up with a trial project that will really show you who this human is. Pay them in advance, have them do the trial project, ask them, don't tell them, ask them, when will this be done based on the scope of work? When do you think you can have this done? If it's Friday and they say Monday, great. I want to know they can communicate, manage expectations, manage themselves. I don't want employees that need to be managed. And then you can do lots of fun things too within that, different fly traps that I do, especially for virtual workers, but it would work for local workers too, which is things like, I'll say, all right, in order to do this, you'll need to download the assets, go to this drive, here's the username and the password. But I send them the wrong password. And I wait how long it takes for them to follow up. Because if they tell me they're going to be done on Friday and I get a frantic email Thursday night saying the password doesn't work, now I know you're a procrastinator. By the time you get to the end of this process, you have nothing but bloodthirsty, deadly assassins. You have the best of the best of the best of the best of the best. And then you conduct your interviews. One of my favorite interview questions at this point is, look, you are massively overqualified for this role, which very, very, very often is true. When you run my framework, what you find is people that have hit glass ceilings see the opportunity and come to you. So now you get a 20-year credentialed journeyman applying for your close to entry-level job, and you're like, dude, you're overqualified. When you pay more, you get overqualified people. And the reason I ask this question is, I want to make sure you're not coming with a sense of entitlement, that if I ask you to take out the trash, you'll do it, that there's nothing beneath you. And I've got 10 or 15 interview questions I really love. I can share them with you. I have them all written down. By the end of this process, you have the best person you've ever had in your entire life. This framework is hard to build once, but once you've built it, it's a forever funnel. It's the gift that continues to give. You'll always, always, always have a lever you can pull that will spout out really amazing people.
Okay. I want you to keep on this path, but I want to click on something that you mentioned where the guy who you said, oh no, I got to spend $1,000 or $2,000 or $50 for this person. I just want you to speak to that, like a scarcity mentality. Like if this guy's running a 7-figure business early on, or girl, and they're like, I'm kind of hemorrhaging dollars, I'm spending over here, I'm spread thin, I'm the owner operator, I'm hemorrhaging cash flow, I'm trying to do it all, hold shit together, I'm being pulled in all these different directions, and then I got to do this thing. It's obviously a scarcity mentality, but it's also real to them. What would you say to that person on how to like overcome that scarcity thought of spending money to test people out, or just in general at this season that they're in? And then I definitely want you to keep going on the thread with the hiring. But when you said that, it kind of felt like a relevant piece to click on or double click on.
Yeah. So first of all, they're right. The constraints are real. The financial constraint is a very real constraint. So, when some douchebag who's made a bunch of money gets online and tells you, spend money, don't be afraid, like maybe don't listen to that guy to a degree that would put you in danger. That's a very real constraint that you're to honor. And there are ways around it. So if you can't spend money, spend time. In the filtration process, filter maybe more aggressively with people's answers. End up with a smaller pool. Maybe you don't test 10, maybe you test 5. Maybe you don't pay 100, maybe you pay 50. But you have to pay something. Here's the truth. No matter where you are in the country, you're never going to find a full-time employee for less than 30 grand, right? That's $15 an hour. So you're going to spend $50 to make sure this $30,000 expenditure is sound. This is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy in your entire life. And if you really think about it, that's actually not a $30,000 risk, because that one person, that's what you're paying them. That one person is a risk to every other employee that you have, because one bad apple spoils the bunch. They're a risk to every customer that they engage with, because one bad employee can ruin customer relationships. And we've all seen that happen over and over and over again. They're a risk to your reputation. One bad review can kill a business. We've seen that happen before too. They're a risk to you legally and financially, because one employee who's negligent can get you sued. They're a risk to your entire business. So whatever your business is worth, that's the risk. Will you spend $50, 5 times, let's say $250, in order to secure your 6, 7, approaching 8-figure business? And if the answer is no, I don't know what to do with you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for clicking on it. Andrew, if you have something you want to say, if not, Kasim has to keep ranting because he didn't get to the interview process or what to do when they do respond. Or
No, I think let's just keep going. This is so good. I want you to at least finish out your 7 steps there.
Yeah, well, I stopped telling you what the numbers were, but I'm pretty sure. Oh, so we got through step 6. We're filtering the stack is step 4. Running the paid trials is step 5. The interviews is step 6. And the interview process, if somebody's gone through this whole process, which by the way, very few people will, that's the point. You're already dealing with a peak performer. With interviews, my strong recommendation is, they're capable of the job. Make sure they're a culture fit. Make sure this is a person that you could spend time with. And then the interview process for me is expectation management for the job. So if you notice there are problems that people run into on the job, get that out in the interview. So for example, you might say, hey, listen, I want you to know your comp, and I see this with tradesmen all the time, more and more now. Windshield repair is a really good example. What was the other one that just happened? The guy hunted me down, man. I'll think of it in a moment, but they don't get paid unless they get a review, which, good, bad, or indifferent, that's the policy. And maybe it's not, they don't get paid entirely because I'm pretty sure that's illegal, but they don't get whatever bonus they're going to get, or they don't get whatever kudos and props they're going to get unless they get a review. Now, if you hire somebody and tell them that, that's rough. If in the interview you say, hey, listen, my reputation is the most important thing to my business. I've been building this business for 35 years. It was my father's before mine. My reviews are critical. I have a bonus structure. You already know because I put it in my job posting. It's very generous, but it's tied to reviews. If you get a bad review, not only do you not get a bonus that time, but it down-regulates the bonus that you're accessible to for subsequent projects. And if you don't get the review, then you're not going to get the bonus. Talk to me about your capabilities of hunting down reviews. If you have that conversation post-acquisition of that talent, that's you saying, you must do this and you have to comply. You have it during the interview process and you get them to sell you, you'll never have a compliance problem because they know, they're like, no, I know. We had the conversation, you manage expectations, and you can do that with every single skunk that exists in your business. Put your skunks on the table. Hey, just so you know, one night a week, everybody has to work one evening. We're a 24/7 emergency plumbing service, and the way that we've chosen to do this is instead of having a graveyard shift, which is impossible, I've got 7 dudes, and one person takes an evening shift, and that's the way that we're gonna. And I don't know how that math works out because I don't actually run graveyard shift, but you know what I mean? Like whatever's hard, whatever sucks. Hey, we've got kind of this expansive geography, and we've agreed because we have this government contract to go out and haul, the gravel for the base, and the base is 45 minutes out, and it's a longer drive, and so we're going to comp in this way. But I need to know that you're going to be willing to do that if your card is pulled and you're the one that has to do those things. Put your skunks on the table through the interview process, and then that's step 6. Step 7 is onboard for success. When you hire a peak performer, when you hire top talent, it's so easy to ruin them. It's so easy to break them. And the way to break them is to treat them like a child, to delegate tasks, not projects, to look over their shoulder. If there's ever anything subjective, this is especially true with tradespeople, because remember, trades, it's artistry. And if you don't believe that, by the way, get out of the trades. You know what I mean? You don't deserve to do that job if you don't really believe in the importance of what you're doing. Trades is artistry. And if you look over a grown adult's shoulder, if you're sitting there looking over a grown man or woman's shoulder saying, hey, change the square to circle, change red to blue, I move that line, you are ruining them. You are ruining the thing that they're bringing to the table. You're ruining their autonomy. The rule about criticism is you can offer objectively true criticism only. Hey, just so you know, the studs have to be 18 inches apart. That's protocol. And if we don't do that, it's not going to pass inspection. Has to happen. That's objectively true. If it's subjectively wrong and you don't like it, shut your mouth. Who made you God? They're probably right. You're probably an old fogey that's been doing this too damn long, and this young buck actually knows a thing or two. Anything subjective, let go, because authorship creates ownership. And if you really allow people to author things, to create, to do the project, here's what you'll find, and you'll find it over and over and over again. They take possession and ownership of it in a way that you couldn't pay somebody to do. They'll actually come back to check in on it and make sure it's done right. You want to talk about warranted work. This person really cares. They really care. Treat them like an adult. And then get rid of the communist manifesto that I see so many businesses running by. This weird, I remember I worked at JCPenney as a kid. I've had 30, I'm the least employable person in the whole wide world. I worked at JCPenney as a kid, and they had this minute by minute clock that was running if you ever clocked in late. And I'm 16 years old, racing to get in, and for every minute, I forgot what the penalization was, but it was not insignificant. And it was by the minute, the way it would be in the gulag. You know what I mean? The way that a prison warden with a chip on his shoulder would run a business, like treat people like they matter, and like they're human and they're adults. And that's a little soapboxy, but gosh, I feel it's so important. And you know what? I think that's every business owner's inclination. Every business owner, in my experience, loves their staff. But then they get burned and they get taken advantage of and they get hurt, and then they overcorrect and like, you know what? Screw this. It's us versus them. It's, the top of the warehouse to the bottom of the warehouse. And then that creates this disparate environment and relationship. The way to protect against that is massive overcommunication. I hire slowly, I fire quickly. The first time you make a mistake, that's my fault. I obviously didn't manage expectations because I know you're smart. I know you're industrious. I know you're proactive. So, Mike, you made a mistake. I know that's my fault. And I'm gonna tell you that right out of the gate. It's my fault because I know you're smart, you're industrious, you're proactive. I need to talk to you about this mistake, though, because if it happens again, it's catastrophically damaging to the business, and I need to explain to you why. We're going to get on the same page. I'm going to put it in writing. You're going to sign it. I'm going to sign it. We're going to close the book on that. I'm never going to judge you by it again unless it happens again. Second time it happens, Mike, I just want to make sure that I understand what's happening because this mistake happened again, and I told you this is an absolute non-negotiable for me. Can you tell me, am I misunderstanding the situation here? What's going on? It's now your fault. First time it was my fault. Second time it's your fault. Third time you're fired. That has to be what it is. For as long as you put up with somebody who will continue to get away with things, they'll continue to get away with things. That's why my process works so well, because it brings you people that aren't going to do that to you. But for the people that are doing that to you, get rid of them quickly with a vengeance. And communicate to people ahead of time, because very often you're suffering in silence. Somebody's doing something they shouldn't do, that you don't like, that you think is wrong, but you're not telling them. And it builds 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 and it builds. And then they do something small and you're like, you gotta go. And they're like, what the hell just happened? We have to communicate. We have to get good at letting people know what the expectation is.
All right, Andrew, I know you want to jump in, dude, but I wanted to, if you had to hire someone quick, do you still put them through this whole thing? Is this?
Dude, I don't hire quick. I hire slow. I'll tell you what I will do. If I'm desperate for a person, I go poach. I will go poach. So if I needed an HVAC guy, what I would do is I would pretend my HVAC was broken. I'd call every HVAC company in the city with the worst problem in the shortest timeline. I'd get them all out to my house and I'd see who communicates the best, who follows up. I might not open my door for a couple of minutes and see if they knock. Do they get pissed off? Do they follow around? Like I'll go outside. I'll break my HVAC myself and figure out like, who do I love the most? And I'll say, what are they paying you? I'll add 20% to it if you can start Monday. And then I hope they say I have to put in 2 weeks, right? Because you want to test them. But yeah, that's the way I hired quick, is I'd go poach a good person.
Well, so good, man. So many nuggets there, and so many things for all of you listening to put into practice. How does this? You have the Pareto Talent company that also sources executive assistants for, if I'm understanding correctly, for folks, right? Do you want to speak to that at all? I mean, in terms of what that service is and how valuable an executive assistant is to this type of business owner?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is don't hire me. I think if you're a tradesperson, especially, we're a premium. I charge you $3,000 for something you could probably get for $2,000 if you do it yourself, and I just gave you all the tools to do it yourself. So go download the book, the workbook, the cheat sheet. That is all that I do. And
I think that's true. I'll just cut you off though, but it's like sometimes it costs, it's
you're
like,
right. So if they want to hire
that
us,
whole process in place, I've been working on it for a year and I've got like 70% of it, so yeah. I'm not saying it's not easy or like, but you have so many different things coming at you. And then it's like, I got to hire somebody. What does Kasim say? I'd like to get it going, but I didn't follow all your 7 steps, and I've had some success and some failure. But it's like, to another person, they might go, well, that's a whole nother project to put all those hiring steps in place. Could I just go ahead and
we're absolutely the easy button, no matter what, me or somebody else. And the reason I preface with don't hire me is because I want to be as aggressive as I'm about to be. An executive assistant is your most important hire. If you don't know what to hire yet, it should be an EA, because you're the least scalable part of your job. And if you're spending all of your time in booking, talking to customers, answering the phone, following up on logistics, trying to figure out how to file your workers' comp insurance policies, blah, 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 that is all stuff you could farm out to a competent EA. And a competent EA is going to expand your capabilities, which is the best way to expand your business. Go get yourself an EA. Sometimes your EA lives with you. If you got yourself a kid that needs something to do, you know what I mean? Like, you go track him or her down, and a nephew, a niece, or whatever, and that, comes with its own issues. I hire out of Latin America because all sorts of reasons that we can get into on another interview because we don't have the time. But that's my favorite place. Time zone, cultural, religious alignments that allow for just easier segues. And then I throw things at my EAs, y'all. Little to big. This morning I sent my EA, I'm taking my kids on a camping trip with Front Row Dads, and part of the camping trip is you have to get them a really meaningful gift that you give them at the end. It's like a milestone gift. And I thought of exactly what I wanted to give them, but it was going to take me time to research. I just pull up my phone, I voice message my EA, and I'm like, hey, I need you to go research this thing, find the place that produces the most authentic, bespoke, custom versions of it, and can ship to me quickly. That would have taken me an hour and a half myself. But now I get to get that off my plate and I never have to worry about it again. Every business owner, every tradesperson should have that exact, hey, we're running out of materials for this particular thing. Go find these materials for me. Find somebody who's local and can source it quick. That's the type of thing that you need help with. So get yourself an EA yesterday. And if you want a pro tip, go hire out of Latin America. $2,000, $2,500. Dude, the people that you can get are triple PhD worthy. If you're struggling with finances, go get a financial mind. My personal CFO is in Latin America. You guys have met him, Esteban. He's a literal genius. He's a college professor. He just lost the geographic lottery, born on the wrong side of the arbitrary line. So the poor guy has to work for me. He'd be a Fortune 100 company, but I have access to truly extraordinary talent. You can too if you hire that way.
Bro, I love that. By the way, for everyone that's listening to the show, season 4, and if you haven't listened to the past, we have our VA services, but like we've really started to pivot more like CRM setup and web optimization and client journey optimization and lead follow-up optimization and just like those pieces, because the administrative is critical, like what you're saying. And also for these blue collar guys, a lot of them have like an office manager in some cases, that like someone in-house, but they have zero understanding of how to do any of the things that I just listed off. So that's kind of where we parked a little bit in that direction to help this guy with a lot of that, the white collar systems for the blue collar guy. So I don't know if you have an opinion on that, but just to piggyback on, if you have a piggyback thought on that before we kind of start heading towards the exits, just to honor your time and
For lack of a better way of putting it, it's basically like modernizing their tech stack.
Yeah.
It's like literally if I go to a lot of these guys' sites, and we're talking 7-figure companies, I go to their site and I hit call, and it like just calls the owner's cell phone.
Yeah. Dude, I'm buying these businesses right now.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing exactly that. You ask any of them, do you have a CRM? What's a CRM? Do you have a customer database? Most of the ones I've spoken to, without exaggeration, have it written. It's on a physical piece of paper. And I don't want to make fun of anybody. Here's the truth is I don't think the white collar, blue collar delineation should exist. I actually think the blue collar businesses, they're more real, they're more tangible, they're more profitable. Private equity is flying in that direction. You've got the most valuable asset class in the functional world at the moment, and it's time to start treating it that way. Yeah, so I think what you guys are doing is absolutely necessary. I'd actually love to have you come talk to my incubator about what you're doing. I think everybody would get a kick out of it.
Oh, sweet.
I love that. Yeah,
Gentlemen,
I'm speaking. You actually know Adam Bensman, do you know? He said he knows you. Yeah, he's having me speak to his roofing mastermind in a couple of weeks. Yeah, so it's really good. Kasim, I know we got to wrap. Is there anything that we didn't ask you before I ask your final question? Is there anything we didn't hit on? Anything we didn't talk about? Anything that didn't come up in this conversation? You're like, I'd really like to plug that, or I wanted to share that, or I want to talk about that before I ask your final question, we head out.
Go snag the book. It's going to be published this month. If you like the book, write me a review. Otherwise, gentlemen, always a pleasure. I love you so much. Thank you for having me. And everybody who is here, thank you for showing up live.
Well, I'll tell you, I already opted in for the book, immediately took me to this bonus page with this handsome looking stallion of a man, and immediately got my email with the copy. So just like having a conversation with Kasim offline while I'm having a conversation with Kasim online is the best practice in itself. So just go through, subscribe for the book so you can model exact process there. Kasim, we ask every guest the same exact question. What does it mean to you to be better than rich?
Free, dude. Freedom. When I got money, I didn't buy stuff. I bought time. And so I really love being free. I spent so much time with my little boys. We've gone to the Slick City Slide Park 4 out of the last 5 days. You know what I mean? Like I just do whatever I want to do with my son. So that feels a lot better than rich.
Dude, love you, man. Thank you so much. I would love to take you up on, speaking to the incubator. We could talk about that offline. And if you have any other interesting guests that should come on our show to talk about how they're helping the blue collar space, I'd love those introductions as well. Listener, thank you for supporting the show. Kasim, thank you. Andrew, as always, thank you. And as always, leave today better than you found it. Till next time on the Better Than Rich Show. Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at betterthan_rich and join our Facebook group at the Better Than Rich Show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, leave today better than you found it.